Hello, happy Wednesday. I'm Beverly Hosford. This is Erin Nitschke. We're going to chat with you today about squatting with your knees over your toes on the NFPT live show. The National Federation of Professional Trainers is what NFPT stands for. We are a personal trainer certification company and continuing education. And how are you doing today, Erin?
I'm good. Excited for our show.
Sweet.
How are you?
I'm pretty good. I'm interested to see if our ongoing rainstorm is going to stop. We've had like a little pause on summer here in Montana. Yeah. Like it's just been raining for days, which I like. I like it because eventually we're going to get that heat that sticks around for 2 months. So
yeah, a little moisture is okay. We've had some clouds here too, but it hasn't been cold or anything.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, it's just been really weird, really interesting. So I'm curious what the weather's going to do from here. I'm going to share the show out on Facebook and Twitter real quick. If you know anyone who's a personal trainer or who has interest in learning about how to squat properly, we are going to be talking about that right here on the show. And if you have any opinions about how to squat properly, we are all about opinions. Come and share them with us. So let's dive right in. So there's this whole thing about squatting with your knees over your toes, and we want to really pick it apart today. You know, are you supposed to squat with your knees over your toes, or you're not supposed to squat with your knees over your toes? And if you know me and Erin, then you know by now there's never a straightforward answer. But the straightforward answer, if you don't have much time to hang out today, is that it depends. So it really depends. And so we're going to talk about where this whole squatting with your knees over your toes concept came from, when it's valuable and then when it's not valuable, and maybe a little bit about how to, when you're not having someone squat with their knees over their toes, what are the other options and when would you use those? So Erin, why don't you tell us about the history? You were telling me before the show about the history.
Yeah. So that whole thinking of never let your toes, the tibial translation, what we refer to as tibial translation, is that movement of the knee going over the toes. That whole belief of never let it happen originated from a study that was done in around like 1978 from Duke University. And that study found that movement forward created shear stress, and then thus leading to injury. But really what the problem is that excessive movement, leaning too far forward into a lunge or squatting motion, is really what causes the issue in those injuries versus just the tibial translation alone. And then around 30 years later, the University of Memphis found, as they were doing a study on this whole tibial translation phenomenon, found that knee stress did increase by about 28-30%, somewhere around there, in that tibial translation, that forward movement of the knee. However, it was the hip stress that increased by over 1,000% when that knee movement was restricted. So ultimately saying that a little tibial translation is okay. It's not leading to this gigantic shear stress issue that everybody is so concerned about. And believe it or not, I mean, even though that study alone in 2003 is several years old now, not the most current, but that thinking is still out there in the fitness industry,
right?
For whatever reason. And I think what you said initially, Bev, is that it does depend. There are so many factors that contribute to how a person squats. And it's really related to flexibility and biomechanics and health history and so many other things. But I think there's validity on both sides of it because those factors do vary so much from individual to individual. And when I'm thinking about my own group fitness exercise teaching experience, and you're in a group of say 20 to 25 participants and you're teaching them these movements, it's very difficult to give individual attention to all 20, 25 people. So a really great effective cue is to tell people, keep the knee in line with the second toe as you're lunging or squatting, because that then keeps the knee going in the same direction as the ankle joint, which is what we want. Yeah. But it's not so much about the tibial translation either that we're so concerned about.
Yeah, you've got to cue people somehow. And when you're in a big group, you especially have to cue them somehow, like bring the dumbbell towards your shoulder, bring your hips back towards the wall. Right. And so you could cue them to keep their knees over their toes, or you could just cue them to reach down towards the ground and then see what's happening around the classroom. And if you see anything really odd, you could go over to that person and just say like, hey, what's going on? Can you bring your knees over your toes? If you can't, because, I always find it interesting. I was actually interviewed on this topic recently for one of our authors for NFPT, and you'll see that article posting tomorrow all about how to regress a squat when someone has trouble keeping their knees over their toes. And the answer I gave her when she asked me, like, what do you do, is when you have people squat, when I work with someone one-on-one, I usually have them squat without any cues at first. I just say squat, and sometimes I'll have them even march in place first and then squat, so that it can even just see when they march in place, where do those feet land? Where do your hips and knees and feet land naturally? And I just always like to take note of that natural squat before I go ahead and alter it. So in a group fitness class, you could even just tell people, reach down to the ground and put your butt back and just see what happens. Right. And then from there, then I will sometimes say to someone like, oh, it's interesting how you squat. Like, I'm wondering if you can keep your knees over your toes or not. And sometimes, I'll have them close their eyes and squat, and I'll say, how does this feel? And then I'll have them make their feet more narrow or more wide and say, how does this feel? And try to really get people to tune in. Because as you know, I'm all about body awareness. I'm all about that inner feeling. And the same thing goes with posture. We could do a show on that sometime. Posture is very much an individual thing, and it's great to have someone else guiding your posture, but I feel like the best posture you can have is guided by yourself from the inside. Of course, sometimes people need some guidance.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great point, is just observing those natural body mechanics that people have. I mean, if you look at children, and I observe this all the time with Olivia. I mean, she's a little over 3 now, but kids are in constant tibial translation. Watch them squat. They literally look like an Olympic squatter. Those knees are over those toes. And so, but think about their flexibility. Children are extremely flexible in every joint. I mean, they're built for flexibility. And the same thing with, like Olympic lifters. When they're in a squat, when they're in that full squat overhead press motion, there is full tibial translation. That's just the way that it is. And I think another consideration too is looking at the difference in limb length of your client. Really tall individuals, people that have very long limbs, they're going to have absolutely tibial translation. They're going to have some movement of that knee over that toe. Otherwise, if they keep that vertical lower leg motion, to avoid this sheer stress fear, that they're probably going to fall backwards. I mean, you have to think about the lever system, the lever system in the body. They have really long limbs. They're going to have to get into that squat, and to get parallel, that knee is going to move forward. Yeah, otherwise, they're not going to be they're not going to be using proper form. And that's really the bigger issue, is prioritizing form over anything else. Even if that means doing a movement without weight, or, something like that, doing very simple movements, just like you've said, in observing your clients. How do they squat? What's their original squat look like? Go messing around with it.
Yeah, I love that. You're totally right on about the biomechanics, and that each person might have something different going on. And so I think we've kind of answered the question, like, squatting with the knees over the toes is not always really that accurate. And so now I want to kind of go to some of the input we've got from other people. I just put a article in the comments that our lovely author Alex Clearwater wrote. It's called Proper Squat Progressions and Alignment Corrections. And she goes through some ways that if you do see weird stuff going on with the knees, there are things you can do aside from trying to cue it, where you can actually try to correct it. And I love what she says at the end of her article. She has the knee over toe alignment myth. The knee over the toe is a myth, is just a myth. I believe it should be something more like knees should not excessively pass over the toes as a knee valgus. This is a great starting point for your beginner clients who are still learning coordination and strength. And so, you should check out that article if you want to get some more input from her. This article is really popular on our site because she gives these excellent corrections that you could call them corrections, or you could just call them variations. They're just different ways to squat that are, your client is going to be like, cool, this is different. I like different. And in the meantime, if there are any issues, so to speak, because there's a discussion in the industry going on right now that like muscle imbalance is also a myth, that there's no like imbalance. Your muscles aren't actually in balance, otherwise you won't be able to walk. It's more just that some muscles are little bit stronger than others. And as a trainer, it's really important to account for all of the muscles, all 21 hip muscles, and all like 15 to 16 knee muscles. And in order to do that, you have to challenge the body, not just in a regular squat, but by putting a band around the knees or a ball between the knees or staggering the feet. So go check out her article for some ideas. I also want to just really briefly mention some of the comments that were on Facebook this morning. We had Madison out in Alabama say it depends on the person, the femur length, and the comfort level. In general, I say no, you don't squat with the knees over the toes. Ryan Phillips says he agrees. It depends on biomechanics and what's appropriate. There's no rules to exercise, just rules of the body. And there's nothing wrong with your knees going over your toes. Heck, your knees go past your toes every time you go up the stairs. And then the lovely Hannah Danielson, who's in Wyoming, she's one of our authors and illustrators. She says no, restricting the knee behind the toes allows for greater hip torque. And so, and then Ryan posted a video. So it sounds like from the little bit of poll we got from our audience that, yeah, we're realizing this. So I'm really excited that people are realizing it.
Yeah, and I think when I go to squat, I'm more concerned about the hip hinge. I'm more concerned about them initiating movement from the hip instead of basically prematurely moving their knees forward. When you squat, the movement is not initiated at the knees. It is initiated at the hips. So you stick those hips back, then you drop it like it's hot. That's what you do. Get that butt down, but don't drop the butt first. You've got to get the hips back. So I think starting with teaching a hip hinge and how that feels and where the shoulders are in that motion, I think is important. And then I think also making sure that they've got that flexibility in the ankle to plantar flex.
Yeah.
You know, there are some that just don't have that flexibility. And so when we see a lack of flexibility in that area, those heels are going to have a really hard time staying down on the ground.
Yeah.
So you've got to assess all angles of it. But when I teach it, I'm really more concerned. You got to hinge at those hips, get a broomstick and have them hold it and hinge so that they know what that feels like.
Yeah, and you just reminded me of the article you wrote, Erin. Proper squat form, drop it like a squat.
Yep, drop it like a squat. Yep, that's exactly it. Because I see so many people when they go to squat, they drop the hips first before they stick them back. And that's really where that problem is going to originate. You're never going to be able to develop the appropriate flexibility, the appropriate strength, the appropriate biomechanics if we don't start with how that joint action initiates. And that's at the hip joint.
Yeah. So I tossed your article in the comments too, proper squat form. So just some thoughts from Erin on that. And, you know, I'm not going to say that I haven't cued people with knees over their toes. Like there may be articles out there where I said, put your knees over your toes. Like I wrote an article about squatting when you're pregnant. And, you know, I might have cued in that article, put your knees over your toes. And we're not saying there's anything wrong with it. We're just saying that there's so much more to consider than that box of form cues.
Right. Like I think one of the things that's important is it's a good general cue to say avoid excessive movement of the knees over the toes. Yeah. But to categorically say never do it, not so much. That's the myth that we're really talking about, is because there's just not enough founded research that says yes, conclusively, this causes X. There's really no cause and effect relationship there. But numerous studies have found, yes, it causes force. And there are other studies that are like, well, no, we really think it's this that causes it. So who knows? In 25 years, this thinking might change. But that's kind of the beauty of the industry, is it's always changing. It's also one of the maddening factors about it too. But just, you know, I think changing our thinking to the avoid X versus don't ever do it.
Yeah.
Just avoid that excessive premature knee movement forward.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, here we are, June 20th, 2018. This is the squat update. Stay tuned. Next decade, we'll have some other.
Yes, back in 35 years.
That's what drives some people nuts about our industry, is we're always changing our minds, but we're just always learning more as we go. And I think that was an excellent way to start with the knee over the toe thing. Was a great, and I think it may have, a lot of things in the fitness industry stem from the personal training or physical therapy world, I meant to say. Yes. And it may have just been a physical therapy cue that someone learned in physical therapy, and then they brought it, in, and it was effective, and it works to keep people in line, so to speak.
Yes.
Like,
yeah,
keep my students in line, and it makes people look right. But that's another discussion we're having right now in the industry, is about this body image and how are we supposed to look? It's like, not just how are we supposed to look, like, are we supposed to look thin? Are we supposed to have certain muscles? But also, how are we supposed to look when we exercise? Are we supposed to look a certain way?
God, I hope not, Yeah, I think that's going to be a conversation that carries on forever. There's for so long been certain expectations. And I think even when it comes to performing certain movements, like I think about the push-up, and there's always been this, you got to get your chest to the ground. That has a whole lot to do with shoulder flexibility and not so much strength.
Yeah.
So I think when we stick things in categories like that, and we say, you got to do it X way, we're so short-sighted in all of those multiple factors that affect movement. No two people are created the same, and the part doesn't look the part. I mean, what does the part look like? Yeah. So it's thinking about, for this individual, what is their active range of motion? Yeah. If they can't get all the way to the ground, does that mean they're doing it wrong, or they're, not looking the way they're supposed to? No, there are other factors that are at play. Yeah. And we have to think about it holistically in that entire picture versus saying, oh, well, that, just prescribing a certain way it should look. That's so annoying.
Love it, Erin. That's so great. Yeah, and we should probably do some more shows, maybe one on the push-up and one on, what did I mention earlier? Squat? I can't remember.
Lunge? Did we?
No, I was just saying, just like, what does proper posture look like?
Oh, posture, yeah.
Let's put those on our list. And you guys, if you ever have suggestions for show topics, we're open. I want to just mention a few of our people that are with us right now today to acknowledge them, and then we're going to close out and try to keep these shows short and sweet for you. Billy says, keep your squats low and your standards high.
It's exactly how I feel about my high heels. I keep my heels high, my heels and my standards high.
Go. Keep them both high.
I do. I keep them both high.
Mandy says she was told to do a squat like sitting on a chair behind you. I agree. I think even take it one step further and squat like a toddler. Try to take your butt all the way to the floor, because I feel like that's that flexibility through the other joints that we start limiting it when we stop squatting like a toddler, because they get up and down from the floor. Eventually we just go halfway and we just sit in a chair. And so our body learns and it adapts. And I'm not saying you should start doing that tomorrow. It would take time to teach your body. You can use a suspension strap to help with lowering to the floor and having some support. But I think to really get that true ankle dorsiflexion that you were talking about, Erin, we need to squat all the way down to the ground. Of course, now if people have been through their life and they've gotten joint issues and problems due to what they've done, I wouldn't suggest it for everyone, but the apparently healthy individual I would. And I'm going to say for the next 5 years, I'd be curious just to see if I can encourage my son to keep doing that as he grows up, what it might do for him if,
Right.
Yeah. All right, Isaac, time to do your butt to the floor squats.
It's time to squat, Isaac.
Just be curious to see how his ankle dorsiflexion evolves. So
yeah,
a little experiment. I hope you didn't mind signing up for it.
Not in the least.
Next week, Idea World 2018 is coming up next Wednesday. So on Wednesday, we are going to do a real fun show. We're going to talk about don't do this at Idea World. And we're going to give you some tips, things not to do when you're at a convention. We're hoping it'll be a little bit of a comic relief, but also a little bit eye-opening for folks that are going to the convention for the first time.
Yeah, definitely.
Join us next Wednesday on NFPT Live. We'll be here at 10 a.m. Mountain Time, and we'll see you then.
Yes, practice your squats in the meantime.
Yes.